The primary purpose of Innovative AAC Solutions, the podcast, is to educate and inform. The views expressed during all episodes are solely those of the individuals involved and do not constitute educational or medical advice. They are not necessarily the views of Special School District of St. Louis County.
Here's another episode of Innovative AAC Solutions, and today's episode we have on Erin Alexander.
So with Erin, I don't think I know Erin from the district.
No, Erin is a parent, and she is on Instagram as Spins and Stomps. Erin and I actually got to collaborate with one another for a project for nurses that I did, and that's how we met each other. Something that Erin is really passionate about is letting people know how to support their Gestalt language processors with AAC and helping her daughter through the stages of Gestalt language processing.
I feel like this is going to be an amazing, insightful episode. I love Erin. I follow her, and she shares tons of information. If you don't already follow her, she shares tons of just practical insight in her stories and on her Instagram page on like what it looks like and what different gestalts at different levels can look like, multimodal communication examples. And it's just the first of a few parent perspectives we have on this topic. And I admire her so much because she does. She's got the practical experience of being a parent, neurodivergent, and like you said, you've collaborated on other projects with her.
Yeah, and something that I wanted to let our listeners know is from that parent perspective, when we're having those IEP meetings and we're talking about Gestalt language processing, sometimes a few handouts can help parents, process that information at home and really make it more digestible. So on our AAC website with parent handouts, we have a few supports in there, some nice one-page handouts that really break down what the stages look like. And then we also have some support like research articles for parents who are looking for some more in-depth education. But let's go ahead and hear from Erin Alexander about the parent perspective and focusing on touch chat word power. Welcome back to AAC Innovations. I am here with Erin Alexander. Erin, can you go ahead and introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your path and your background in regard to your daughter's AAC?
Yeah, so my name is Erin. I am the creator behind the Instagram account Spins and Stomps. And my background is I'm a registered nurse, but I'm also a mother, and I have 3 children, ages 4 and under. My daughter being the oldest, and she is my multimodal communicator. She speaks, and she also uses all kinds of AAC, high-tech AAC, facial expressions, gestures, all of that. So our path really to AAC was, her development seemed typical until about 18 to 24 months, and that was where we noticed a speech kind of felt like a plateau and maybe even a regression. Some words that we had, I noticed we weren't using anymore. And so we got in touch with our pediatrician who recommended an eval with a speech therapist. And this was traditional analytic processing type, which at that point I had no idea the differences. But they were giving us all the strategies and everything that we were already doing at home. And it really wasn't seeming to make a difference, or we weren't moving the needle at all. And what I was noticing was a lot of like what I now know to be unintelligible strings of language, where she would kind of like be dancing to herself. And it was very clear there was lots of ups and downs in the inflection and intonation of her voice. And it really seemed like she was either talking to herself, singing to herself, telling a story of some sort. And I was like, okay, well, there's definitely some language going on in there. And then, when she did repeat 2 words together, because that was the big thing at near 2 years old, was like, hey, we're starting to want to see some 2-word combos. At that point, whenever she did do a 2-word combo, it was a direct copy and paste. It was a direct like immediate kind of copy and paste, and it was a generalization. Open door. It was open door for everything, that she wanted open, like that, what we now know as a gestalt, that meaning, she just applied that to everything.
Everything that meant open.
Everything that meant open. Yes, exactly. That meant open, but she didn't isolate that. It just took the whole chunk, and that whole chunk had meaning. So that stuck out as kind of strange to me. And what I also noticed was when she did have communication that seemed functional, like saying hi, it was the same exact way with the same exact intonation every single time. And I thought to myself, that doesn't really seem like it's hers. It seems like but it seemed to work and it fit. So I was like, well, she must know what it means, So there were just little things that I thought, this isn't quite adding up. And when we weren't making progress in speech therapy, and when she really started to dislike it, because of its heavy emphasis on compliance, and it was really kind of the language around everything was kind of deficit driven, I started to look around on the internet to see kind of what else we could do to support her. And that was really where I first came across Gestalt language processing at that time, was the blog, Alexander, Meaningful Speeches blog. And everything started to connect, the dots all started to connect at that point. And I was like, yeah, I think maybe this is why what we're doing isn't working. And so, we kind of took off from there, but that was our background and how we got started with this language development, this Gestalt language development.
Right. And then can you kind of tell me more about how AAC came into play?
Yeah. So she was about 2 years old. Yeah, 2 years old. So after finding Gestalt language processing, we used a registry to find an NLA trained speech therapist. And at that point, we were still, we were making progress, and she liked it. It was play-based, it was working, but a lot of her speech was still pretty unintelligible, even for me and like family members and familiar communication partners as well. So, and we just felt like there was a lot that she understood and knew, but couldn't actually speak it for whatever, couldn't actually say it. So our speech therapist at that point said, hey, would you guys be interested in something like this? And showed us an AAC device. And pretty much immediately, I thought, yeah, let's do it. Anything to help with this. We were all having frustration around communication breakdowns. We thought this would help mitigate some of the more challenging behaviors we were seeing, which it eventually did, helped her express herself. I think the only concern from our family side was, will this prevent or delay her from using speech, which our speech therapist reassured us that it wouldn't. And we actually saw the complete opposite of that. Her intent to communicate, her enthusiasm for communicating, her verbal speech took off. I mean, it was just amazing.
The power of AAC, huh?
Yeah. It was.
Yeah.
It really
Once
was
you see it,
empowering.
you're hooked. Like that's
Yes.
Yeah. Can you tell us about some things that have supported her communication and can you kind of tell a little bit more about the AAC system that was chosen for her, as well as what's happening in the environment that supports her?
Yeah. So the system that our speech therapist recommended was Touch Chat with Word Power HD. And as to specifically why, I'm not really sure why she chose that one, but she did feel like it would be a good fit. And when we looked at it, it looked pretty intuitive to me. My daughter was attracted to it right away. We did like a trial. She brought a trial one to our house first. And one of the things I think that made the initial introduction so successful, my daughter's special interest is Cocomelon, and a lot of her gestalts were songs or phrases directly from Cocomelon. So what she did was she edited it, customized it with the direct scripts I gave her, whichever gestalt she used at that time. She put a picture, and then she found the exact audio recording. And so that was immediate buy-in for my daughter. It was like, it spoke to her immediately. And so that made it really interesting and engaging for her and gave meaning to it. And then from there, continuing to customize it. So adding all of the favorite things she liked to play with that she couldn't communicate verbally at that time, but I knew because she would hand lead me over to the bubbles or things like that. Adding all of those items in from her favorite toys, her favorite snacks, and really customizing it. And really what we tried to do was just keep it super low pressure. In the beginning, I mean, I didn't have any formal training on this device, so I just kind of went with how I felt we both like how she would want to interact with it, what would be meaningful to her to, at first my thought was, oh, I need to teach her, I need to teach her how to tell me help or specific things that would be helpful for other adult communication partners. And then I realized that's not where we have to start. She has to be interested in this device. And so we get there like through play and things like that. So my goal in the beginning was at least once a day, even if it was just 10 minutes during play, just model next to her, even if she didn't even look at the device, even if she didn't even like touch it or do anything, was just to have it out available a lot. We would take it to some of her favorite places like the grocery store, and I would just hit buttons for Apple or whatever it was, and then I would hand her the item or I would just set it in the cart. So it kind of was very passive in the beginning, and over time I communicated it with her as if even though she wasn't responding to me with the device at the time, I just used it to communicate with her. And then she kind of realized, oh, this is a back and forth, like we could use this as a back and forth tool. That's how she interpreted it. And so over time, she really began to be interested in it and show interest in it and enjoy it as like something really, I think, interesting to her. And then it like had meaning. Especially when we were having communication breakdowns or frustrations, or she was having a meltdown, I wouldn't say anything, and I would just bring over the device and offer the device. And the first time she was having a meltdown, and one of her go-to self-regulation strategies was to go for a car ride. So she was having a meltdown, and I brought it over to her, and she clicked, "Let's go for a car ride." And I just picked her up, and put her in the car. And it was just like this whole new world to her, where she was just like, for both of us, really.
Suddenly I have autonomy to tell you.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
How
Absolutely.
huge. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. And really from then on, it was like this, it's like her safety, because there are times when she knows what she wants, but she can't communicate it, or someone else isn't understanding what she's saying. And it is like that, yeah, another form of communication that she can, advocate or have her needs met. Yeah.
I do want to just kind of hear you say and emphasize to listeners like that very first starting point was the SLP taking that device and customizing it and putting in those gestalts that were her special interest, and that kind of got the ball rolling in the right direction. So I know as an SLP in a classroom, it's like, oh my gosh, I have so many students, but it seems like that is really a key like accelerant point where you're like, okay, let's get this kid fired up. Let's get them communicating about what they want to communicate about in a way that's meaningful to them.
Yeah.
And it's checking those boxes for them, whether it's that self-regulation piece or
Yeah.
it's fun. So hearing you say that, I think that that's so important to just really dive into that and kind of explore that even deeper.
Right.
What other things besides Coco Melon was she putting in, or were you putting in and changing the device to reflect?
Yeah, so her favorite snacks. So we would go into our pantry and we would take pictures of like whatever it is that was, the picture actually linked up to the actual snack or flavor. So choices there, more specifics, different kinds of pastas because she didn't like the bow tie, she likes tortellini or whatever. So going in there and really not just having it general, going in there and putting in specific parks. If I just say park, it's like, well, why are you fighting me on going to, why are we having frustrations here? Like, well, I know you like the park, but it's like, well, I don't want to go to that park. I want to go to the one that's got this. So making sure we go and we customize like, those items, those places. So we're not just generalizing it, making more specific. And really, yeah, it started with the toys, her favorite places, her favorite snacks and foods. that was really how we customized a lot of it. And then her phrases page, when she was in stage 1. So made a whole folder of the, kind of target or gestalt offerings, and then also included the ones that she already had. So what I thought she was trying to communicate and what maybe she may want to communicate and what she already had.
I love that. It makes it so much more manageable to have a starting point where you're like, okay, I have this kid in front of me. I know that they're a GLP. I know I should be customizing something. It sounds like this is the place to start. Those really, high interest specific customizations, having those specific targets in mind, talking to parents and getting them on board with, hey, what would make your life easier? What specific things at home with toys, with food, with places, and it's a team effort. It sounds like you made customizations as well. It wasn't all on the SLP and it wasn't all on you, but teaming up and having that consistent communication is going to be key.
Yeah, definitely. It was like the first act, it was like I said, as parents, we want to set our kids up for success and we want them to be able to advocate, and we tend to gravitate towards what's going to serve you best and what's going to help you best. And it's like, wait a minute, before that, we need to start with connection. We both need to, this needs to be a positive and fun experience, just like for any kids. But I think when we get to our non-speaking kids or myself with my autistic child, it's like, you end up in okay, I need to give you survival skills. And it's like, we'll get to those skills, but in the beginning, let's make it fun. Let's connect on this, because that's where that real intrinsic motivation is going to start. And that's where I saw our AAC use really take off. Was we started with adding Jaja's house. We started with, which is her grandma's house. We started with her favorite thing to do, which was use the spray hose outside and play with the flower petals, so it's that was where we started. And that's where I really saw things kind of take off and her own intrinsic motivation to want to use her device.
Yeah, I love that. I love capitalizing on those special interests and having that be the focus and that connection be the focus, so that the entire experience feels positive and feels motivating and, springboard off of that. What are some challenges or risks or threats for customizing GLPs in touch chat for parents and teams in general?
So challenges with customizing, I think I kind of mentioned it, is sometimes we will put what we want them to say or what we think that they should be something that they have in their repertoire. So I think that can be a challenge, is often just reminding myself, to follow her lead and really try to see what it is that she wants to communicate. And thinking about it from her point of view, even though it is a robust system, something that was recently brought to my attention is does it have a button or something that says, I need a button, something that I'm wanting to say is not on my device yet, or bodily autonomy. This is their device, and I'm now coming into her space and touching essentially an extension of her. So I've learned about, asking her permission to model on her device. And then now that she's saying no more, I am looking into getting my own device to model next to her. And that you'd want to.
I want to bring up real quick, just as SLPs who are listening to this, teachers who are listening to this, we don't all have to have our own devices, but we can always use the software editing systems as well for, companies, vendors support that. So if you need to reach out to your AuCom facilitator to put that on your teacher level laptop, please do so, because we want to respect these kids' autonomy. And if they feel ownership over their device and it's invasive for other adults to touch their device, then we need to think of other creative solutions, and that software editing, system is always one of them.
Yeah. And I know on ours, and I think a lot of other systems, there is you can print and laminate the exact copy of hers. So if I didn't get another iPad or something, I could just print and laminate that and still model next to her or still use it. So that's an option too. And then the other thing is even though she's often presenting, or I'm hearing of other GLPs presenting in one stage verbally, being a different stage in in AAC, like, that kind of, you're able to see differences in their language when they have access to AAC, and maybe what stage of NLA they're in. So for me, that was something I had to think about with, not like on the core vocabulary, not putting, initially I had wanted to put like let's go, because that could be helpful for stage 2, let's go, and then the different mitigated places. But then you're changing when they go to stage 3, then you're taking that away. So that's something to really think about, not doing that, and maybe putting let's go on there in a different folder, and then having it mitigate, being able to, show mitigation options from there. So
Yeah,
just think.
I love that you're thinking with the end in mind there with about, you know, those future mitigations and not changing that motor plan. That is so
Mhm.
important to consider, just long-term success,
Yes.
how to support these kids for sure.
So yeah, I think those would be most of my challenges in terms of customization. Outside of that, when you with a high-tech AAC, the other challenge that we run into is guided access versus not guided access, dedicated device versus media device, and that's also
Let's
something
get into
to
the guided access versus not guided access, because I feel like that's an issue that we have to navigate in the schools as well.
Yep. So it's something that we have gone back and forth on, and it's something I think each family has to decide like what works best for them, because I don't think there's any like one right way. And in some stages in the beginning, we did guided access only. And then as she got older and as she was learning how to navigate on like a phone, how to navigate YouTube, and starting to show us interest in different things and abilities, like wanting to type on and search in the search bar and things like that, and really showing us, no, and being able to communicate, I don't want this, I want this. As parents in the beginning, I was just I was so happy that she could communicate that. And so I was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go for it. And offering, just like I would with my other child, like, hey, there's times that we're going to have the TV on and there's times that we're not. And kind of trying to figure that out as well, especially in times of dysregulation where I can see you're having a hard time accessing speech, but it's also really regulating to have your show on, but you also want to be able to communicate at the same time. So either doing a split screen, if that'll allow, or if the child will allow, or having AAC, whether it's the printable version next to them, and then whatever show or media that they're accessing, whether it's a game or media that's regulating to them at the same time. So just kind of like walking through that and figuring out what's worked. And we went through a time where we did, you choose kind of basically whatever you want to do. And then I was noticing, challenges with using it really late at night and and it was kind of disrupting sleep patterns. And I was like, well, I don't make my other child stop talking when it's bedtime, but I also don't leave the TV on and, things like that. So I was like, how can we do this? Okay, so the iPad can be off guided access for these times. And then when it hits this time and we're starting to kind of wind down for bed, you'll always have access to your AAC device, but it's going to be in guided access. And she knows where to, charge it and where she can access it. And so she can still, talk essentially to herself as she's falling asleep and everything, but we're not staying up on YouTube and getting stimulated, because all of us as adults will do that too sometimes,
Right. Well, and just that navigation of what's making sense and what boundaries do we need to put in place that are appropriate in each, specific context. And it sounds like, you found a way to navigate that with your family. And I do want to just offer for educators listening to this, as facilitators, we are here to support and guide the teams in those conversations, and including parents in it is, going to be very important too. So all good points to consider. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, and I just want to add, like, it'll fluctuate because autism is a dynamic disability, and there are some days where she doesn't use media hardly at all. And then there are other days where she's not visibly ill yet. I don't know she's ill, but I can tell there's lots of, her threshold for tolerance is so low, and she's very irritable, and she's really needing more self-regulation with a screen. And I've learned, like, I don't always know why, but I've learned on those days that there's just some times when it's not going to be, it's not going to be in guided access. It's going to be on media all day. And it doesn't stay like that forever, but I have to kind of adjust my boundaries based on like what
the
I
context
was going like this because I
right?
was going to say rules,
Yeah.
but like my boundaries and
Yeah.
expectations depending on where she's at that day, that minute, so it fluctuates.
Child in front of you, creating that context,
Yes.
being flexible, adjusting appropriately. Absolutely. And it's hard as school teams to know all of those things and to be able to be that dynamic, but it's possible. And, sometimes it's just a matter of figuring it out, gathering together as a team, talking through, discussing all these things, and just, again, being dynamic and willing to change and willing to be flexible. What do you wish parents and therapists could know for GLP communicators like your daughter?
With specifics to AAC or just about GLP in general?
Both.
Well, I think, and I know it was a mindset shift to me as a parent of like, this is my child's voice, and constantly reminding myself of like, my child having access to this device is the same as them having access to their voice. And I know like at school, sometimes the volume would be turned down. And I know that can be challenging because you're working with lots of children, but like to have the volume completely off, or it's in the backpack or it's not charged, or, oh, we're putting it away because it's causing a meltdown every time the battery dies, being problem solving around that and still being like, okay, but this is still their voice. So we still need to find a workaround for how she still has access to that. And then on the parent side, really like my own responsibility to model this and to, it is hard. It was kind of almost like learning a different language. And it was almost kind of like, it's not a practice of mine to use it. It wasn't. And so I can't expect that my child is going to be competent in using this device if they're using it only for if it's only being modeled to them that 1 hour while they're at school. It's not that the job, the SLP's job or the teacher's job to make them proficient on this. It's something that across systems we need to be modeling. And I have to take my own time, whatever that looks like, to, educate myself from AAC specialists, SLPs, and AAC users. And that's something I'm really, as a parent, trying to learn more from, and platforms like social media have really helped so that I can get the perspective of a full-time or part-time AAC user and how they like to use their device, and just different perspectives that I wouldn't have thought of myself as a non-AAC user. So just really committing to learning and practicing and being on this journey alongside my child.
Love that. And I love that, you're willing to fully embrace it. But then also I'm hearing from you saying that like you were a beginner once, and that you didn't allow something like technology to intimidate you. And that you sought out more resources, especially like on social media, to learn from other people. Because I feel like that, as SLPs, if we're listening to this, it can feel like, oh, this is an aspect of my job that, is difficult. Well, Erin didn't even have an SLP background, and here she is rocking it,
And I am like totally still like, I am a beginner and I don't always know if I'm doing the right thing. As a parent, I'm leading with the intent to help give my child the tools that she didn't otherwise have access to. And I just felt like, even though it was scary to do this because, it was just all so new and it was a lot, it was scarier to me to feel like my child wouldn't be able to communicate or have her needs met without me. That was just too much for me to think about. So I just channeled all of that fear of the unknown. Like, will she ever speak? Will that be her primary mode of communication? Will she always be a multimodal communicator? I still have these thoughts. I'm not sure, but that doesn't stop me from, like, I'm just taking it as I'm just trying to set her up. I'm like reaching for the moon, and if we land on the stars, that's cool too. Wherever we end up along that journey, I know I'm doing my part to help her have agency and autonomy in her life and feel like safe because she has a form of communication that's accessible to her at all times, reliable.
And that's like the crux of our jobs. That's why I wake up in the morning to serve these kids who, need to have communication, and it is such an important life skill. So it takes a team, it takes a village, and kind of leads us into the next in our favorite question. Can you share a favorite AAC moment with an AAC user?
Yeah, well, one of my favorite ones was one that I shared about already, where it was like that light bulb moment about, this is my device to help me get my needs met about, going for a car ride. My other favorite one was had to do with a favorite snack, and I didn't know that she hadn't shown me, she hadn't used this button before, but we were in the car driving and we drove by an In-N-Out, and she pressed stop, and then she navigated multiple pages to drink and then milkshake. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool.
She knows what she wants.
Yeah, exactly. It was like she told us to stop driving, and then she wanted to go get a milkshake. And so, of course, that was just so fun. Of course, we did.
Yeah, milkshakes for everyone, right?
Yes, yeah. And it's just joy to be able to have this device to connect with your child. We connect non-verbally all the time. But just this was another modality of communication and another modality for us to connect over this communication piece. And it's been really a fun journey for us.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. You've been a wealth of information for our district, and just knowing that these skills are so crucial and that parents should absolutely be a part of the team and an active team member. And, listening to them is going to be helpful in those customizations and helping these students in any way. So thank you so much, Erin, for sharing. And this is another episode of AAC Innovations.
For this week's innovative activity, I thought we would go with something kind of generic because I feel like most people have some kind of barn toy or some kind of toy that's similar to this in nature. Maybe it's not even a barn, maybe it's a house. But I just want to kind of give you some examples of what gestalts and gestalt language development can look like when we're doing child-led play around and still using our AAC systems to be modeling. So for this one, this is just a simple barn toy, and if you watch, it makes noises. Little creatures pop in and out. So got that one, a little switch here, little cow, and then a little horse over here to the side, and the door opens. So again, depending upon the language stage you feel like they're in, you're going to use your language samples and your communication samples to look at where you think they might be. And you're going to model language within that stage. So if we're in stage 1, we're going to model potential gestalts on their AAC system and with their mouths. So it might be something like, it's a dog. He's barking. It's opening. Let's open it. Where's the horse? Here it is. Where's the cow? There it is. We're going to model language around that. Or it's too loud, or I don't like it. We can model that on the AAC device in sequences, or if we feel like they're not picking up the sequences on the device as how it's programmed, we might consider modeling, or we might consider programming a single gestalt within the device, and that's completely device specific. So if you have questions on where to program your gestalt's in a device, ask your AAC facilitator. But then we're going to, that's in stage 1, we're modeling a variety of pragmatic functions and potential gestalts. If we're in stage 2, we're just mixing and matching them, right? So it's a dog, it's a chick. Where is it? Where's the horse? Here it is. There it is. It's popping out. It's hiding. We're just going to mix and match, especially ones that we've heard them say before. Again, remember you can shorten it too, right? And then in stage 3, we're just going to reference. So, weather vane, there's a chicken on it. I don't know if you can see that, but chicken, cat, cat barn, dog house. Just, what else could we do? We could say yellow chick, chick yellow, chick water. I think that's supposed to be a little pond. And I can just reference the environment that we're talking about on the AAC system. So, and then move into grammar and beyond stage 4 and plus. So I think that kind of goes over that. You can do that with any child-led toy that they're using. Just think outside the box, find gestalts and find language around meaningful experiences and meet them where they're at. If you have questions, reach out to us, check out this toy in the IRC, and enjoy.